The Art of Happiness, where Eastern wisdom meets Western psychology. Welcome to today's episode where we'll be exploring the art of happiness, the profound collaboration between His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama, and psychiatrist Dr. Howard C. Cutler. This groundbreaking work brings together ancient Buddhist wisdom and modern psychological understanding to answer one of humanity's most fundamental questions. How can we find genuine happiness? Introduction. The meeting of two worlds. Picture this. A Western-trained psychiatrist sits down with one of the world's most revered spiritual leaders. One comes armed with scientific research and clinical experience. The other brings millennia of contemplative tradition and personal practice. What emerges from their conversations is not just another self-help book, but a deeply insightful exploration of what it truly means to be happy. When The Art of Happiness was published in 1998, it represented something revolutionary, a bridge between Eastern spiritual tradition and Western psychological understanding. The Dalai Lama wasn't just sharing Buddhist teachings, he was offering universal principles about human nature that transcend cultural and religious boundaries. The foundation: happiness as a skill. The core premise of the book might sound deceptively simple. Happiness is determined more by our state of mind than by external circumstances. But let's pause and really consider what this means. We often think of happiness as something that happens to us. We get the promotion, find the perfect partner, or finally buy that house we've been dreaming about. But how many times have you achieved something you wanted, only to find that the joy was fleeting? As the Dalai Lama explains, this is because we've fundamentally misunderstood what happiness is. According to the Dalai Lama, happiness isn't something we find, it's something we cultivate. Like learning to play an instrument or mastering a sport, achieving lasting happiness requires understanding, practice, and patience. Think of it as mental training rather than a treasure hunt. What's fascinating is how this ancient wisdom aligns with modern psychological research on hedonic adaptation. Our tendency to quickly return to a baseline level of happiness despite major positive or negative life changes. The latest lottery winner and the recent amputee will, within months, report similar levels of day-to-day happiness. Not exactly what our intuition would tell us, is it? The nature of suffering. Now, let's talk about suffering. Not exactly a crowd pleaser at parties, but essential to understanding happiness. The Dalai Lama explains the Buddhist concept that suffering is an inevitable part of life, but also that much of our suffering comes from our own minds. Here's where the book gets really interesting. The Dalai Lama distinguishes between pain and suffering. Pain is often unavoidable. We all experience illness, loss, and disappointment. But suffering is our mental response to pain, and that's something we can work with. I'm reminded of Viktor Frankl's observation from Nazi concentration camps that even in the most horrific circumstances, humans retain the freedom to choose their attitude. The Dalai Lama would agree, suggesting that it's our mental habits that often transform pain into prolonged suffering. Dr. Cutler brings in relevant psychological research on cognitive therapy, which similarly focuses on how our thoughts and beliefs shape our emotional experiences. Both traditions recognize that we can learn to relate differently to painful experiences. Compassion. The path to connection. If I had to identify the heart of this book, it would be the Dalai Lama's emphasis on compassion as central to human happiness. Not just because it's morally right, but because it's practically effective for our own well-being. Think about it. When you're consumed with your own problems, They seem to expand to fill your entire mental space. But when you turn your attention to others' needs, something remarkable happens. Your perspective shifts, your problems right-size themselves, and you often experience a sense of purpose and connection. The Dalai Lama explains that compassion isn't just about feeling sorry for others. It's about recognizing our fundamental interconnectedness, the fact that, as social creatures, our happiness is inextricably linked to the well-being of those around us. This isn't just spiritual talk. Modern research on phenomena like helper's high, the measurable elevation in mood and immune function that comes from helping others, confirms what contemplative traditions have taught for centuries. Giving really is receiving, neurochemically speaking. The inner enemies. Now let's meet the villains in our happiness story. Anger, hatred, fear, and anxiety. The Dalai Lama doesn't mince words about these destructive emotions. He calls them inner enemies that create suffering for ourselves and others. But here's where his approach differs from some Western perspectives. He doesn't suggest suppressing these emotions or feeling guilty about them. Instead, he recommends developing what psychologists might call emotional intelligence, the ability to recognize these states as they arise and respond skillfully rather than reactively. For example, with anger, the Dalai Lama suggests examining it closely. What triggered it? What thoughts fuel it? Is it serving any useful purpose? Often, this kind of mindful attention helps dissolve anger, or at least reduce its intensity. There's a wonderful anecdote in the book where the Dalai Lama is asked how he feels about the Chinese occupation of Tibet. Rather than expressing hatred toward Chinese leaders, he distinguishes between opposing harmful actions and hating the actors. They are human beings who want happiness and don't want suffering, he says, displaying a remarkable capacity for empathy toward those many would consider enemies. Reframing perspectives. One of the most practical aspects of the book is its discussion of reframing, changing how we interpret events to reduce suffering and increase well-being. For instance, the Dalai Lama suggests that when faced with difficult people, we can view them as valuable teachers who help us develop patience and understanding. When experiencing setbacks, we can look for opportunities for growth and learning. I have to chuckle at how the Dalai Lama turns conventional thinking on its head. Most of us try to avoid difficult people, but he sees them as precious opportunities for practice. It reminds me of that person we all know from work who drives us crazy. Perhaps we should be thanking them for the spiritual growth they're facilitating, though maybe keep that thank you note in draft form. This approach has much in common with cognitive behavioral therapy, which helps people identify and challenge unhelpful thought patterns. Both traditions recognize that our interpretations of events, not the events themselves, determine much of our emotional experience. Happiness practices. The book doesn't just offer philosophical insights, it provides practical exercises to cultivate happiness. These include 1. Developing mindfulness, paying attention to our thoughts, feelings, and sensations without judgment. 2. Practicing gratitude, regularly acknowledging the positive aspects of our lives. 3. Cultivating compassion, actively wishing for others' well-being. 4. Analyzing problems, breaking down challenges to find constructive solutions. What makes these practices powerful is their simplicity. You don't need special equipment or circumstances to implement them. They're available to anyone, anytime, regardless of their situation. The science backs this up. Research on mindfulness meditation shows it can reduce stress, anxiety, and depression while improving attention and emotional regulation. Studies on gratitude practices demonstrate their effectiveness in boosting well-being and life satisfaction. Ethics and happiness. An important thread throughout the book is the connection between ethical behavior and happiness. The Dalai Lama argues that acting in alignment with values like honesty, kindness, and fairness creates the conditions for inner peace. This isn't about following rigid rules out of fear of punishment. Rather, it's about recognizing that ethical conduct leads naturally to better relationships, fewer regrets, and greater self-respect, all key ingredients for happiness. Again, psychological research supports this view. Studies show that people who engage in pro-social behavior, acts of kindness and generosity, report greater life satisfaction and positive emotion than those focused primarily on self-interest. It's worth noting that in our achievement-oriented culture, we often separate success from ethics. The Dalai Lama's perspective suggests this is a false dichotomy. True success includes not just material achievement, but also the quality of our relationships and inner experience, both of which are enhanced by ethical living. The role of religion and spirituality. While the Dalai Lama is obviously a Buddhist monk, one of the most remarkable aspects of this book is its accessibility to people of all faiths or none. He clearly distinguishes between spirituality, concerning inner development and values like compassion, and religion, which involves specific beliefs and practices. While affirming the value of religion for many people, he emphasizes that the core principles of happiness he discusses are available to everyone regardless of their metaphysical beliefs. This inclusive approach makes the book's wisdom accessible across cultural and religious divides. It's not about becoming Buddhist, it's about becoming more fully human. Happiness in perspective. As our time together draws to a close, I want to highlight what I find most compelling about The Art of Happiness, its balance. The Dalai Lama doesn't promise perpetual bliss or freedom from all problems. He acknowledges life's difficulties while offering practical ways to navigate them with greater ease and purpose. This isn't toxic positivity or spiritual bypassing. It's a clear-eyed approach that accepts reality while empowering us to work constructively with whatever arises. The goal isn't to eliminate negative emotions entirely, but to develop a more balanced emotional life where positive states predominate. And contrary to some misinterpretations of Eastern philosophy, the Dalai Lama doesn't advocate detachment from life. Rather, he encourages full engagement with life's experiences while maintaining inner equilibrium, what psychologists might call emotional regulation. Conclusion: beyond cultural differences. What makes The Art of Happiness endure as a classic is how it reveals the common ground between seemingly different approaches to human well-being. The Dalai Lama's insights, filtered through Dr. Cutler's psychological lens, show us that across cultures and centuries, we've been circling the same fundamental truths about happiness. Whether through ancient contemplative practices or modern scientific research, we keep arriving at similar conclusions. That connection matters more than achievement, that how we interpret events shapes our experience more than the events themselves, and that cultivating compassion benefits both others and ourselves. As the Dalai Lama famously states in the book, I believe that the very purpose of our life is to seek happiness. Not shallow pleasure or momentary gratification, but deep, authentic well-being that comes from living in alignment with our values and in connection with others. The art of happiness, it turns out, isn't about mastering circumstances, but mastering ourselves, our attention, our perspective, and our response to life's inevitable challenges. And that mastery is available to all of us, right here, right now. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of the art of happiness. Until next time, may you practice the art of happiness in your own life, one mindful moment at a time.